Welcome to Leading Locally, a Leadership Lee County podcast, where each episode I have the opportunity to sit down with a local leader as they share their leadership thoughts. My name is Kristen Reeder. I've had the privilege of being part of the Lee County community for most of my life. I'm continually inspired by the remarkable leaders who call this area home. Their dedication and impact are transforming our community in meaningful ways, and their stories and insights offer invaluable lessons for all of us. So settle in, take notes, and enjoy this month's episode. Hello, podcast family. Joining me today, I'm so excited to have is Rusty Prewett from Prewett Pest Control. And Rusty and I actually first met in our Leadership Lee County class. Do you remember that, Rusty?
It's been a few years, yeah.
It's been a few. 2019, I think, was our graduating.
Pre-COVID, that's right.
We were the last ones before COVID hit. That's right. Well, Rusty, I'm so grateful to you for being with us today and kind of sharing with us what has been going on with you and the thoughtfulness behind the change from your all-state insurance business to the pest control business. So will you kind of give us a little bit of background for our listeners that may not be familiar with you?
Sure, yeah. So, just stepping back, graduated in Auburn in 2001, moved to Birmingham, Alabama, lived there for 10 years. And as we started raising a family, moved back here to Auburn in 2011 with a newborn, a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Oh, that's great.
and had an all-state insurance business, bought an all-state insurance business here in Auburn. And gosh, had that business all the way up until December of last year. So almost 15 years. Almost 15 years, yeah.
Wow. And so I'm assuming there was a catalyst that caused you to kind of make the change or begin to think about, because that's a big shift in gears in what you're doing.
What do you mean, going from insurance to bugs? I mean, that totally translates, right?
It does.
Well, talking about change, I mean, we graduated Leadership Lee County right before COVID, worldwide pandemic. And I remember, so it was about that time. It was actually November, around Thanksgiving of 2019. I'm sitting around the Thanksgiving table with my family and extended family at my grandmother's, and I'd been thinking about making a change, not necessarily selling our Allstate business, because we were thriving with our business. It was having the best years we've ever had, winning awards, all that good stuff, and had been planted in the Auburn community, long enough to where, we were kind of hitting on all cylinders, but we saw the industry changing, right? So we saw, more people going online to purchase insurance versus using a local agent. And so it really had me thinking a couple of years prior to that, Thanksgiving of 2019, there's a lot of changes coming. What are we going to do if one day there's not a need for an insurance agent, or Allstate comes in and says, hey, we're going to get rid of the agent force and we're just going to go direct online. And so it's something that really had my wheels spinning, but what am I going to do? The reason I got into insurance was I was in real estate prior to that, back in 2003 to 2008. Of course, 2008 hits and we go through the recession, the Great Recession, yes. Which it did force me to think about a different career or business to own. That was, my criteria was, all right, it's got to be recession proof. It's got to be recurring in revenue, right? A recurring based business. And I want to own a business. I don't want to just go deal to deal in real estate. So that's actually what got me into insurance. So a lot of the similar characteristics is what led me to pest control.
But with thoughtful intention behind them, like learning about, okay, this is what I don't want to do, but having the vision to figure out what you do want to do. And in hearing you talk about that, I love that you just said, you step back and evaluate it. And so often as leaders, we get busy and we don't do that. But you are intentional in thinking ahead to what is this business going to look like, 20, 30 years down the road. And then that led to you doing what?
Well, again, sitting around the Thanksgiving table, and I share with my family, I'm going to start a new business. And everybody's, kind of lighting up, they're curious, I'm naturally kind of entrepreneurial, creative, and they're wondering what I'm about to tell them. And I said, I'm going to start a pest control company. And everybody's face just dropped. I mean, the same reaction I got when I officially, started telling people in the community. I'll never forget, whether it's someone at the Chamber of Commerce or just people I networked with in the community, and I, would share with them, hey, I'm about to start a new business, and they would get this look on their face like, what is it? What are you going to do? And I'd say pest control, and every one of them, their face would just kind of look long like, what in the world do you know about killing bugs? And I'm like, absolutely nothing. And it was very common, and that told me I was probably getting into the right industry. Because in my opinion, a home-based, a home service business is, in my opinion, a hidden gem, in the world today.
And why is it a hidden gem to you, Rusty?
Well, for a lot of the same reasons I got into insurance, right? So during the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, when I was in real estate, and we went from being on the highs of selling and developing real estate, and when the music stops, and there's not a chair to sit in, it's a pretty helpless feeling, right? And you all of a sudden go from all this revenue coming into nothing, right? And now you're selling a product that people don't have to have. They didn't have to have that lake property or that beach property or that, big fancy home, right? So everybody kind of batting the hatches, right? And so that's what caused me to get in insurance, because it was something people had to have. By state law, they had to have car insurance or home insurance if they had a mortgage. And it's recurring in nature. Mm-hmm. So you don't get rich off of one new customer, right? But when you're bringing in hundreds and hundreds of customers over time, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint. We were able to, get to that very predictable revenue coming in on a monthly basis. And so what I did not foresee happening with insurance, and insurance has been unbelievable to me and my family, and it's afforded me to do a lot and travel the world on trips and all this good stuff through Allstate. But what I did not really foresee coming was the amount of change that was happening with technology, right? So, for example, how many people use Amazon today to purchase household goods, clothing, deodorant, air filters versus 10 years ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, that the technology, in my opinion, just seems like it's hit harder in the last 5 years than probably did the previous, 25 years. And I saw the change happening in the insurance business where, people consistently bought insurance from a local insurance agent, right? And as your Geicos and Progressive and your direct writers came along, you saw that trend going more to convenience of people purchasing directly online, sort of bypassing the agent. And so I'll never forget sitting around, telling my wife one day, I'm like, I really don't want to be the Blockbuster Video of insurance agents.
Oh, I love that.
And now, look, I think there's still a need for insurance agents, and I think there'll continue to be. I think it'll be sort of like the travel industry with travel agents back in the day. However, I didn't want to go through that.
Right.
And so I saw the opportunity to look for a business that checked those same boxes: recurring revenue, recession-proof. But the caveat and the thing we added to the criteria this time was, what is something that technology cannot disrupt or maybe only enhance?
Rusty, that's so good.
And I feel like that was a home service-based business like pest control.
Well, I can guarantee you, I would love it if the bugs went away forever, but they're not, and I need you to come to my house.
Especially not here in the South.
I
don't see that happening anytime soon.
And we've got big ones, so yes. I love that transition. Well, walk me through, because that is a big shift. But when our listeners hear, like, there was such intentionality behind it. And I think it speaks a lot to, you are very well known in our community at your relationship building skills. And so it sounds like this was a way for you to really tap into that and be able to continue it.
We're very fortunate. This community has been incredible for us. I think you get out of it what you put into it. When I first moved here from Birmingham, I walked in before we even moved here officially. We were looking at rental houses before we moved here. Mandy was 8 months pregnant. I joined the Auburn Chamber of Commerce. I walked in, slapped a check on the desk, and said, "This is going to be the easiest sale you've ever made." Immediately drove from there to the Opelika Chamber, did the exact same thing. And of course, that catches them off guard, right? But I invest in the community and see the value in that. So I made instant friends, with the chambers, which is an unbelievable place to start when starting a business.
They're amazing.
So over the years, having created those relationships, my first goal was to grow the pest control business as fast as I could while I still had the resources with the growing profitable business with insurance. And the goal was to scale our pest control company to a point to where if I had to exit the insurance space, I had an income stream to replace it, right? So to take care of my family.
Yes.
And the goal was to get there in 3 years, which was aggressive. But we did. We invested and grew fast and went through tons of skinning of the knees, as I say, and lots of challenges, and still going through tons of challenges. But, we were able to get there in about 3 years to be at a similar place to what took me almost 15 years. With our insurance business.
And how much of that do you attribute to the fact that you had these established relationships? So when you were going to make this change, you already had the credibility in this community.
It's funny. It's almost like I feel like God prepared me to start this business after using our other business as that, not learning curve, because, but it was. And, the mistakes I made, particularly in the first 9 years in business with Allstate, all the terrible management skills I had and the mistakes I made in marketing and bad, hires or good hires that I didn't know how to develop into leaders, all those things. Not that we've got it figured out now, but I think it tremendously helped shorten that learning curve with starting this new business. And then having those established relationships, there's no way we could hit the ground running like we did had we not already invested in the community, in the Auburn community over the last, 14 years.
What would you say? Because I'm just guessing that the pest control business has a good bit more employees than you did with the insurance.
Yes.
And so people sometimes are what can complicate or give you the biggest challenges. Did you see that between the two?
Absolutely. Our Allstate business, we probably averaged 8 to 10 employees at any one time. And so, it's much easier to put in systems and processes and accountability when you've got a small, tight team. And we've got about 31 employees for our pest control business. We're in 4 different cities and markets around Alabama. And so, everything multiplies at that point.
Yes.
So your problems, your opportunities, your challenges, and your employees are your biggest asset and your biggest liabilities. And I see it all the time. There are a lot I've really learned from a recruiting and screening of bringing somebody onto the business. Number one, we owe it to them to paint the truest picture of what it's like to come work for us.
Come on, tell it.
So they know what they're getting into, and it's up to us to also go through a very intentional screening process to make sure we get a true sense of them and vice versa, because we're not doing anybody any good. If somebody comes on, they're excited, we're excited about them, they're excited about us, and 30 days later, it's not a fit, and now they're quitting, or you got to let them go. If you can shorten that, through proper, screening and just being honest, throughout that interview process, get past all the fakeness of that first interview. We've got about a seven-step process on how we go through that. And so the opportunity to develop people, I think, is much better when you get those people that are a cultural fit. Absolutely. As opposed to getting the wrong people in there.
And so tell me about, because leading a smaller team, and I heard you say not only is it a bigger team, but geographically y'all are spread out. Walk me through what that's like, the difference to lead those type of teams.
It's a challenge going, I went from really an owner-operator with our insurance business, because I was there every day. I was in the trenches every single day, till I got to a point where I could kind of pull myself a little bit. I honestly got to a place where I could go out of town for a month and really we weren't skipping a beat. We'd really developed really good people.
That's an accomplishment.
And it took a while. It took a lot of, bumps and bruises and learning
right
lessons.
People, I bet.
And absolutely the right people, 100%. And so, the challenge that you're dealing with a small business in one community, multiplied over 4 different markets, it absolutely multiplies a lot of the, your headaches, like I said, your headaches and opportunities. And I think I've learned, it's better to, there's a lot of meat on the bone here in Auburn, Opelika before we go expand, let's say, out into other states, until we're really maximizing our opportunity here. I think it's a little, maybe short-sighted to go look into a whole new city when there's still opportunity in the market you're in.
So tell me about how you intentionally develop your team. What are some of the things that you do?
Well, and I'll speak kind of, in the past, I think a lot of the things that we did with our insurance business, we're just now are translating over to our pest control business. Because you have to remember, December we sold the insurance business, and a lot of the systems and processes, we implemented a development program, a leadership program for bringing on brand new people with zero experience in insurance, right? But the pest control business, basically we kind of had people running it without me. I was kind of over marketing, kind of overseeing it, but I wasn't there on a day-to-day basis, didn't have capacity, right, to do that. And so we've implemented a leadership program and a development program that basically takes somebody and exposes them to different aspects of leadership and development. And it's not perfect. I feel like with our other business, it took us a while to get there. We had very multiple steps in different places. And so, for example, what we're working on now with our business, with the pest business, is when someone comes on board, whether they've got experience or no experience in the industry, there are tangible steps and milestones that they can take to sort of pave their own path. And so we give them the runway, and it's up to them to take advantage of it. So they can start, I'm not going to say at the bottom, but that's, sort of as an associate, right? And then based on certain criteria, milestones, and things that they have to accomplish and we have to pour into them, then they have the opportunity to really pave their own way. So that's a big thing from a development standpoint. That now look, it's not perfect. We're trying to get that translated, because with a lot of fast growth that we're having, you wake up in the morning like, what fire am I going to put out today?
Exactly.
Am I going to spend time investing in this development program and tightening it up? Or I'm going to go over here and make sure this customer's not upset because we didn't show up for a service appointment, right? So you're still going to have those challenges as you're growing.
But I think for so many people, and again, you're just always about the fires. It's always, and you can't just focus on that, because you said it best. Those people are your biggest asset, and you have no hope of succeeding if they're not doing what they need to do. But I know it can be difficult to balance both of them.
Well, and one thing that we talk about all the time is, we've got to be good firefighters, right? Fires are going to come up, and I feel like we do a really good job of that. If we've got almost 1,400 Google 5-star reviews, and just in our Auburn office, about the same in our other market, we get a 1-star review. It's going to happen.
Oh, yes.
And our team is like the biggest firefighters. They're putting all their gear, they're sliding down the pole. They've got their hose going out to put out the fire, and they take care of that customer. And just about everyone we've had, they change that to a 5-star review because we care, right? But we've got to do that. We've got to do that to have good customer service and be a good business. But what I really emphasize with our team is the fire prevention. We have to be really good fire preventers. And so when they get on it and they're going to put that fire out, my mind automatically goes to, what happened that what is something we could have done differently to keep this from happening in the first place? I think that's the difference between proactive and reactive. And you've got to be both as a business owner, right? Or really anywhere in business as we talk about change.
I love that. Well, so speaking of that, adaptability, like that is a huge trait. How have you had to cultivate your own adaptability in this type of change?
It's funny you say that word. So we have core values at Prewett Pest Control, and that is one of our core values,
nice.
Adaptable.
And we did not plan that ahead of time.
I was like, did she read that on our website? But our core values are passion, excellence, adaptable, creativation, which is a made-up word.
I love that.
And ownership. And the adaptable piece is so huge because that is what caused me to make a change from one industry to another industry that I had absolutely zero experience in. Some would argue I still have zero experience in it, right? But you have to embrace change. And the definition of that adaptable is embrace change for us. And you can ask anybody in our company what our core values are, and they can tell you. All 30 of our employees can tell you that. But the adaptable, I could not be more passionate about that one, because you never know. We cannot control what happens. We can only control how we react to what happens to us.
Amen. That is so good. So if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, Rusty, as you're looking back over the journey, what would it be?
One piece? How about 25 pieces? I don't know. I embrace the challenges, that I've had, that we've had. I think that's is part of getting older, part of getting wisdom.
Yes.
I say skinning our knees, and that you're defined when you go through those troubled times. And if everything were peachy and great, I would say probably the last 18 to 24 months have been the most challenging I've ever had as a business owner. The most challenging.
That's interesting.
And it's crazy because from an outside looking in, we're growing our revenue. We'll do almost $4 million in revenue this year from a company that didn't exist 4.5 years ago. And yet the challenges we've had over the last 24 months, I literally, before we sold our insurance business, I told our team that I was thinking about possibly selling. And, whether in hindsight that was a good or bad thing, I felt like I owed it to them to let them know. And, part of that was to give them the opportunity to move forward with this other, venture. And next thing you know, this person's kind of going over here. And because it was change, right? Change is scary.
Yes, it is.
And they're thinking, okay, well, is Rusty going to have a spot for me over here? Or what do I know about bugs? Or next thing you know, in December before we sold, we were down to one employee. Literally, I was down to one employee and myself in the end of November of last year. And we had, almost 4,000 customers with our business. And you can imagine, I hadn't taken a phone call and done a lot of these processes in the office in years, right? And so if there's anything I've learned is, or piece of advice I would give myself is just continue to look for, not in a negative way, look for landmines out there.
Yes. But
landmines are out there and they're going to happen.
Absolutely.
And I had a mentor of mine tell me, this is a few years ago, he said, when starting a business, I asked, what's your number one piece of advice? And he said, always plan for everything that can go wrong. And I kind of took a step back and I'm like, well, that seems really negative. Plan for everything. I'm a half glass full, right?
Yes, you are.
And what I learned from that, and it was, you have to know how you're going to react if the worst happens, right? So, for example, if we're going to go down to Fairhope, Alabama, and open another location, which we did, we acquired a company. What are all the things that could potentially go wrong, and can I think through them? And am I able to act fast if something happens? Like, for example, the business we bought, the owner stayed on board with us, and he was going to, as an employee, and moving forward, everything's great for 2 months. And the next thing you know, he quits. Next thing you know, he's telling everybody how terrible we are and all these everything that you can imagine bad.
Yes.
Well, I didn't see that coming, right? And so I would think that would be the advice I'd give myself, not in a negative way, but just plan for potential challenges. And don't be so naive to think everything's going to go perfect. Just be thoughtful in making some of those decisions and seek out mentors. There's a lot of people that have done what you're trying to do. There's no new idea, honestly. Most people just take someone else's idea or their thing and they've taken it to the next level based on my experience.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Rusty, that is so good. I'm so excited for our listeners. All right. The last question that we ask all our guests. When you think about your leadership legacy, what do you hope people will remember most about your impact?
I think it's about developing others. I think it's about bringing others with you. We use the term a lot, and this isn't our term, but, we like to get the right people on the bus. And once they're on the bus, make sure they're in the right seat. And we've had great people that have been on the bus that have just been in the wrong seat. And what do I mean by that? I mean, they're doing something in their role, in their job duty, in their day-to-day operations that is not their God-given gift. Well, sometimes we have to do that, right? There's a lot of things I do for the company that I'm not the best at.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that though, too.
We've got to wear a lot of hats. But at the end of the day, if I wake up every single day and I'm doing things, I want to do what I'm really good at, right? And I love it.
Yes.
Sometimes you do things that you're really good at, but you don't love it. You can do it. You're the best person to do it, right? But over time doing that, you're going to get burned out.
You are.
The worst spot you can be in is, you're not good at it and you don't like it. I mean, that is the worst spot to be in. And so I think it's our job to make sure people are sitting in the right seats. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with someone hopping on the bus, they're in the right seat, or you move them around trying to find a seat, and they get off at the next stop and go on to the next opportunity. But I feel like it's my job as a leader, and you're talking about legacy, is my mantra is leave them better than I found them, right? And I haven't always done that. I've probably made some, left them worse than I found them. But hopefully, we're developing some sort of leadership or some sort of skill that they didn't have, some sort of culture that they can take with them to whatever they're going to do, that they're going to be in their lane. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to wake up in the morning when our feet hit the ground. We got to do something that we're passionate about, right?
Oh, Rusty, thank you so much. You have given our listeners so much leadership wisdom to take through us. And thank you for sharing with us. It's not always comfortable to talk through sometimes the mistakes we made, but there's such value in it. So thank you, Rusty, so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This podcast would not be possible without our amazing producers, the Mac Media team, and of course, Leadership Lee County. If you want to learn more about Leadership Lee County and how we grow local leaders to develop their leadership skills so they can impact our community, follow us on Instagram at Leadership Lee County or visit our website, leadershipleecounty.org, for all your leadership resources.